If you're like most people, you don't really know what the word fiduciary means. It's a noun and it's meant to be a person who manages money, trusted person who manages money for someone else. Well, there's a new law in town that goes in effect in September. It's a federal law, and if you've got anyone managing your money, you're going to want to see this, so stay tuned. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Scan FYI. My guest this morning is Tom Duffy of Jersey Shore Financial Advisors. Good morning.
Good morning.
Nice to have you with us. And we have something interesting to talk about because anyone who has any kind of financial advisor or has been reading the news, there's some new things happening in Washington that's going to potentially affect a lot of people and their money. And that's what we want to talk about today.
That's correct.
So you know what? First of all, Tom, why don't you just explain a little bit about yourself and your role in your firm before we
Sure.
go on?
Sure. So I am the founder and principal advisor of Jersey Shore Financial Advisors. We're based here in Tinton Falls, so right down the street from Scan, a lifelong Monmouth County resident. And my job is to help protect my clients' wealth from predators, creditors, and senators. And so I am a financial planner. I am a fiduciary financial planner. That's the F word that we're going to talk about today.
The F word. I didn't realize it really was an F word. So
it is.
You know what? First of all, why don't you give a really solid definition of what fiduciary means?
Sure. So there is a fiduciary definition. Essentially, it says that if you're going to be managing the assets, the money, the investments of another person, that you will put the client's interests first. And so I actually have it on a pledge that I give to new clients. It's put it in writing, and I'll read here. It says, "So I commit at all times during our relationship to the following fiduciary obligations. The first one," and there's a whole list, I won't read all of them. "I will always put your interests first. I will not seek to remove any fiduciary hat," and that's in quotations. "I will always be your trusted advisor during our trusted advisor client relationship." And basically what that means is that when I'm going to make a recommendation for a client to do something related to their finances, whether it's to make an investment, a divestment, if they should change something, they should change their investments, they should perhaps seek out an attorney to do some estate planning, to make a gift of assets, anything along those lines, I'm always going to put the client's interests ahead of my own. And that's, in its essence, that's what it means to be a fiduciary, as opposed to making a recommendation that might put my interests ahead of the client's.
All right, so that second one there, let's give an example so people are very, very clear.
Sure. So the fiduciary rule that's going to go into effect, I think it's September 23rd. That's a new Department of Labor rule. It specifically affects retirement accounts. So for somebody that is retiring and they have a company retirement plan, whether it be a 401k plan, a 403b, a pension plan, any type of employer-based retirement plan where they've accumulated, chances are, most of the money they're ever going to have, right? And that's their nest egg, we like to say, right? And that's the money they're going to live off for the rest of their lives. That's the money that they intend to leave some of it behind for their kids, right? So when it comes to giving advice on a retirement plan, the Department of Labor has come out and they've come out with these rules, and there's 5 simple rules. And essentially what they want is they want to make sure that the advisor is giving prudent advice. The actual sentence is meet a professional standard of care. They want to never put meaning the advisor, never put the advisor's financial interests ahead of the retirement investor's interests when making recommendations. So an example of when this might happen is you're retiring, you have this 401k balance, so somebody suggested, you've done some research, TikTok told you should roll it over to an IRA, right? Right. And so now you've sought out some advice from a professional advisor, somebody that has an office and a business card, right? And purports to be an expert on this kind of stuff. And they make a recommendation. Absolutely. You should do a trustee to trustee transfer, more commonly known as a rollover, from your company retirement plan to this other individual retirement account type situation. And so it's at that moment where the Department of Labor has come out and said, We want to make sure you're putting the investor's interests first. And that's where the problem is. To avoid this, the third point is to avoid misleading statements about conflicts of interest, fees, and the investments. And so when we do that rollover, in many cases, too many cases, oftentimes the destination where the account that money is going to go into, the fees are less than adequately disclosed. Sometimes the advisor is going to earn a commission for helping you to affect that rollover. And the commission, that's the conflict. That's the financial conflict. It's not that you can't have the
Okay,
conflict.
that's it right there.
Right. It's not that you can't, it's not that you cannot have a financial, they're not saying you can't. Like, we all have conflicts. When I go to the grocery store, there's a conflict, right? I have to pay for my groceries. That's a conflict, right? So it's not that what the Department of Labor is not saying that you can't use somebody like that. You cannot work with somebody like that, or somebody that does earn a commission on doing that type of let's call it advice for the moment. It's not that they cannot earn commissions. It's that it should be disclosed, and the client should understand that fully. I've had this conversation with many of my colleagues, and their position always is, oh, the client understands that I get paid a commission. And I disagree. I think clients understand commissions like most of us understand how an airplane stays in the air, right? We know it's happening, but if we had to take a test, we would
Yeah.
have no idea
No.
how the airplane stays in the air. And so
No.
that's often a problem. So I think a lot of folks, they just don't understand the financial conflict that's there, number one, especially if there's going to be a lot of fees that are also coming out. Oftentimes, those types of products, in almost every case, the product company, the insurance company, the annuity company, they pay the commission directly to the advisor, right? So the client doesn't see it. And so oftentimes the client thinks, oh, I didn't have to pay for this. The insurance company paid for it. Well, if you know anything about insurance companies, they don't pay out of their own pocket. So that money's coming out of your account in the form of ongoing fees. And oftentimes those fees can be pretty substantial. And
Right.
especially if it's over a long period of time, those fees keep coming out. It could be a lot of money. And oftentimes we just don't think of it that way. And that's why the Department of Labor, they want to make sure that as retirement advisors, that we are making sure that we are clearly describing that to our retirement investors. That's a big thing. They want to avoid misleading statements. The fourth point, charge no more than what is a reasonable amount of money for a service. Now that's a subjective. That's difficult,
pretty,
really difficult to quantify. And then the last one, and I think this is the one that's going to cause the most tumult, let's call it, as far as whether or not this rule actually gets implemented in September. But this last one is, give the retirement investor basic information about the advisor's conflicts of interest. So what that means is, what it means to me anyway, when I teach the code of ethics class for the CFP board, that conflict of interest is when you're getting some type of sales related compensation or third party compensation. What that means is that if you're a retirement advisor and you're recommending one of these types of products where the insurance company is going to pay me over here for giving advice, this is not coming out my thing, right? You're getting paid somewhere else. The client doesn't pay direct. That is a financial conflict of interest. They're not saying you cannot do that. That's not what they're saying. They're not outlawing that. What they're saying is the retirement investor must have that basic information as to how that works. In my opinion, that retirement investor should also be made aware of how much that conflict is. Because if it's in the thousands of dollars or the tens of thousands of dollars, I think the client would want to know that it costs that much, and that the insurance company, the annuity company, whoever that product sponsor is, that they're basically putting that money out first. And then they have to be able to recoup it out of your account over however long you're in that account to make back the money. Plus the insurance companies, they want to make a profit, right? So that's the problem, is that oftentimes this financial conflict of interest is very rarely, I think, is it disclosed adequately so that the retirement investor knows what is actually going on.
So I feel like, as I'm listening to you, and, I told you this before we went on air today, I was reading up a little bit on this because, I'm just a regular person like most everyone out there. I'm not in this field. I don't have any professional expertise, but, where my money is concerned, I want to know. I,
Right.
I, so I feel like there was a tremendous communication problem. And while it was legal to do this, there was no, maybe they didn't feel ethically bound to share this detail about the money and the commission.
You're
And
not wrong. I
yeah.
apologize. Yeah.
So now that the fact that the administration had to create this new rule tells me that a lot of people were losing out on a lot of money because they simply didn't know. And I feel like maybe if they knew, they would have done something different.
They may have. And so I don't want to make
You
it
don't,
out.
you don't,
Yeah.
you don't know, you don't
Yeah.
know, but they
You
didn't
don't
have
know.
the option. And
Right.
since so many of these apply to, senior citizens,
Mhm.
because you said it's retirement money and that sort of thing. So, I always feel like seniors, some seniors, they don't know to ask. Well, fiduciary, trust, I trust you.
Right.
And there we
Mhm.
go. That's where we went wrong, guys.
Yeah, well, so you're not wrong, and that is it's always been in the Securities and Exchange Commission in their rules that if you're what we would call a fee-based managed account, there we were always held to a fiduciary standard in those things. It's really when they were doing these rollovers from a retirement account to some other type of account that they really noticed that there are so many folks that are using let's call them financial products that are sponsored by an annuity company, an insurance company, and a lot of them they're not regulated as a security. They're more of an insurance product, and
Okay.
so they're regulated by the individual state insurance departments, which is to say they may not be regulated enough, if at all, because they just they have to be approved by the state. But once they're approved, it's the wild wild west, and so that's kind of where there is a drop off, because there are a lot of advisors out there that are not securities licensed or have a registration with FINRA, which is the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority. They have a state insurance license, and so their examination requirements and their expertise in the products and how they work, the bar is a lot, in my opinion, the bar is a lot lower for them to be able to sell those types of products. And so, that's one of the blind spots that we have, is that a lot of these insurance products, they're not actually securities, so they're not regulated
Right.
like a mutual fund or a stock offering or any of those types of things. We're going to put a link in the show notes. It's a
Yes.
questionnaire that
Yes.
you can link to. It's the on the NAPFA website, NAPFA. It's a brochure where it's a questionnaire really that you can either interview your advisor or send it to your advisor and ask them to fill it out to try to get some answers about conflicts of interest. What are some of what's the training that you've gone through? What kind of certifications? What type of continuing education have you gone through? Because you want to try to identify, is your advisor somebody that actually knows what they're doing, or did they lose their job after COVID and they got hired on as a product salesperson, and they've been trained how to sell this product, or are they actually a financial advisor? Because those are two different things.
That's a very good question. That is a good question. So yeah, we're definitely going to put all of that
Good.
in the description so that you'll be able to do that. Here's a question I want to so if you go to your advisor and you ask these really tough questions and they're really hedging and not giving you a real solid yes or a no, what is that kind of telling you?
It's telling you exactly how you feel.
It's
Just like
time
just
for a
like
new
just like anybody
advisor.
else. If you went to the grocery store and you go to the seafood counter and you ask them how fresh is this seafood, and they kind of hem and haw and don't give you a good answer, that's it.
Don't buy the fish.
That's right. That's it. And it's so very simple, but not easy to do, because many of us, we want to believe that we went to somebody who is a financial person. Maybe they work for a giant company. We see that company advertising on professional sporting events. So they must be good people. Yes, there probably are. I'm sure they're good people. I'm sure they donate to charity. They're kind to children and pets, but they have this built-in conflict. That's their business model is built on this conflict of interest. And so, as a client, every client, I think, is entitled to ask these, and as you put it, difficult questions, and your advisor should be willing to answer them. If there is a financial conflict, yeah, I get paid by the insurance company. They pay me 6% commission on every dollar that you invest in this product. What's so hard about that? Because if that product is the right thing for that client,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter how much the commission is. But if it's not the right thing for that client, now we got a big problem. Because that's what I've witnessed is folks are being sold a product that is not the best thing for the client. It's much, much better for the advisor because the commission is so much higher, or the compensation, however that works, or there's a especially in insurance sales, there used to be, I'm sure there's still a lot of trips that can be won, right? If you hit your quota, you sell this many policies, you
Right.
get some
Right.
type of reward. And that's a big problem. And that, if we're pushing a product because I might win a trip, I can't see how that's in the client's best interest.
Well, I think
maybe my eyesight's messed up, but I just can't see that.
I feel like the bottom line here is this law is coming into effect because not enough people are working for their client. They're working for themselves. And
Well, and they let that conflict it enters in. I certainly don't want to broad brush the entire profession. Right?
we're not going to do that.
There's got to be at least 300,000 in the US that call themselves financial advisors. And, by and large, I want to say they're all good people. However, most of us have some type of financial conflict of interest. And that's really what the Department of Labor is saying. It's like, it's okay. You can have a conflict of interest. Just disclose it adequately, fully, accurately, it was probably the right word. Disclose it so that the client understands how that works. Because if you've already built that relationship of trust, if you already trust your advisor and the analysis they've done and everything else they've said makes perfect sense, then it shouldn't matter how much commission they earn on a product if it's the right thing. That's the key. If it's not the right thing, if an advisor comes into a situation and on the first meeting lays out on the table some type of product, first meeting, that's like proposing marriage on the first. Let's propose a marriage on the first date. That's not the way it works. And so that I think is, and for folks that are already working with an advisor, just they should go back and rethink. Gee, every few years my advisor tries to get me to move from this product to this other product. He says, oh, this is the newest thing. And so you have to ask yourself, okay, well, did it cost me anything to get out of the old product, right? So a lot of insurance products typically have a surrender charge or a back end charge because the insurance company, remember, they paid the commission up front, so they have to recoup that over a series of years. So they want you, the client, to stay in that product for enough years so they can recoup enough money so that the insurance company doesn't lose money, because insurance companies don't lose, remember that. They want to make sure they recoup all of their outlay before you leave and go somewhere else. So you got to make sure that there's no surrender charge or something like that. And then you have to say, okay, well, what are the bells and whistles on this new thing that are so much better than on this old thing? Because if they're similar, that tells me anyway that the only reason to do this is so that a new commission gets paid when you get to the new product. And that's unfortunately that's often the case.
So look, it's your money. You're entitled to answers. If you don't like the answers you get, well, maybe it's time to rethink who you're speaking to.
Agreed.
So Tom, thank you. As always, so much great information, important information about your money. Again, all of Tom's info will be in the description if you want to reach out to him or check out the links that are there as well.
Very good. Awesome.
Thank you for being with me today, Tom, from Jersey Shore Financial Advisors. Remember, if it's important to you, it's important to us. I'm Andrea Tarr. We'll see you next time on Scan FYI. Bye, everyone. Bye. time.